thank you for coming today, and we really appreciate you having an interview with us. Tell us your name and where you came from and when you were born and vital statistics.
My name is Hamid Bennett. I came to Milwaukie about 10 years back. In July. So right about this time 10 years ago. I wasn't originally from Milwaukie, obviously. I was born in Japan, in Tachikawa Air Force Base.
Oh.
My father was in the Air Force, and my mother was Japanese.
The United States Air Force?
Yeah, he was actually Army Air Corps before there was an Air Force, and he re-enlisted days after Pearl Harbor. He was a fighter pilot in World War II, and later he was in communications with top secret clearance and worked with cryptology.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I had an older father. And a Japanese mother. Mom was descended from samurai, but a lot of Japanese families were. But we weren't high class. We were like the farmers, where the samurai, when they did their trainings, they worked like directly one-on-one, as opposed to the wealthy high class folks that had like their underlings train the warriors. So I kind of have warriors on both sides of my family, with my mother's side, the Japanese side, and my father's side being in World War II. And all of his uncles were all World War II. They represented all the different branches of the military in World War II. They all saw direct action. They all came home.
Well, did you grow up in Japan?
I didn't. I moved to the States when I was 1 year old. Didn't have much of a choice. So we moved from Japan to Arizona, and then to California, and then to Gresham, Oregon when I was 3. So I grew up in Gresham, really not far from Milwaukee. So yeah, I spent a lot of my formative years in Gresham.
So you're pretty much an Oregonian, huh?
Yeah, I feel like I've been adopted in. I feel like I've been here through most of my years of making memories. Yeah. So
have you lived elsewhere too? I mean,
I lived a little. I went to school for a little bit up in Lacey, Washington, at St. Martin's College. But it's been kind of the Portland area most of my life.
I see.
And my parents passed on a few years back, about 2004, 2005. They both passed on 2 months apart. So that was a kind of a rough time, and I got the family home in Gresham after that, but it was too much for me to handle being a single person, and eventually sold the house and found this little spot in Milwaukie, and I've really come to love this city.
That's great. What do you love about it?
Well, Milwaukee's all about community to me. Like, as soon as I started showing up to stuff, I just was like kind of invited in and like encouraged to participate in all kinds of things. And I love that like it's not necessarily like a really like wealthy city, but like people show up and they've got heart. And they've got like good intentions and good thoughts and wanting to do well by their neighbors, and so I just think it's a really, really special place to be.
It seems like that to me too.
Yeah.
And what did you do for a living most of your life?
Well, so a lot of my kind of earlier years was kind of like post high school. I had a really, really rare lymphoma, so I was kind of an old man for a lot of years from the chemotherapy treatment. So like about the only thing I could do was like be in front of computers. I didn't have much health then, but I could do desktop publishing, so I started learning desktop publishing, and I worked for a translation agency, and later on my mother and I had a translation agency together.
So you speak Japanese?
Oh, skoshi. Very, very, very little. The story goes that my father wanted my mother to teach me Japanese, and the story goes that she'd speak Japanese to me, and I laughed, and she gave up. So because I was a little stinker, I didn't really learn much Japanese. I took some of it in from 8th grade into the high school years, but my teacher was not very well versed in Japanese either.
I was going to say they even taught Japanese in Gresham.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
It was one of the PE teachers was also the Japanese teacher.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I don't know much Japanese, and I sometimes think that like English is a second language to me, but I've just kind of forgotten my native language.
And what about your grandparents? Did you know them?
I did on my father's side. I didn't really meet my grandfather, but I have some really fond memories of my grandmother. Back in her earlier years, I just heard stories that she owned restaurants and they never made a dime because she'd treat everyone like family. Do you need seconds, thirds? Like no one walked away hungry. And I have some really fond memories of my Japanese grandparents visiting in Japan. Just some really sweet, fond memories of them over there.
Did you visit? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you visit back in Japan often?
Just all when I was little. Like I got my first Star Wars action figures in Japan. So I was there kind of like early on, like all kind of before the age of 10 or so.
So then you were ill and you found your career working at home.
Well, so that transitioned. While I was learning desktop publishing and doing that for a living, it just wasn't quite enough for me. Like I was maybe starting to head a little bit more towards better health, and I got a little voice in my head that said, go to massage school. It's like, I've never received a professional massage before, but this little voice kept getting louder, like, go to massage school. So I had to find out, like, what is this all about? And I ended up enrolling at East West College of the Healing Arts in Portland, and I've been a massage therapist for, it'll be 20 years this October that I've been licensed. So that's kind of my bread and butter is massage therapy.
And it's a wonderful massage, if I may say.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do a little bit different kind of work. I do myofascial body work. And it's not the only work I do. I also do photography, and that helps quite a bit. So I have contracts with the city of Milwaukie and also with North Clackamas Parks and Rec District. Nice. So I was just taking pictures this morning of a kids cooking camp. So they got me really busy this summer, which is really nice to be have so many events happen this summer when these past few years in the pandemic, it was just everything halted. Yeah. It's a busy summer with everything going on. I like it. It is. And I know that the pandemic is kind of still going. But we're still in it. Yeah, we're still in it.
But I don't know. It just feels freer.
Something about it feels a little freer.
So you came to Milwaukie and you liked it, but what made you come to Milwaukie in the first place?
Well, it was kind of the Goldilocks experience of just needing to find a place. I looked at one apartment and it was like a big complex. It was just huge. And then I looked at a standalone house and the floors were sort of wonky. And then I found this very, very simple apartment in Milwaukie, that old 1930s building that our landlord thinks that maybe it was a general store in the neighborhood at one time, because it kind of has an interesting building. It's been split up into 4 different units, and so it's just a really simple place surrounded by trees, and it's a half mile from Elk Rock Island, so I'm down there all the time, and I just fell in love with this place, and I started. I really didn't spend a whole lot of time here for the first few years that I was here, and then I met some friends and they suggested I apply to be on the Milwaukie Arts Committee, and I did, and I got on the committee, and that was quite a lovely 5-year journey.
You've been on that long.
I was on the Arts Committee for 5 years. I worked my way up from member to secretary, so I took all the notes, and then to vice chair, and then at the top of the pandemic, I became chair of the committee.
You aren't still?
I stepped down in December. I wrote my resignation letter on the 30th anniversary of my very last chemotherapy treatment. So I figured, oh, it just came out. I didn't even have to edit it. It was just like, oh, that's a truth that is there. So so I was done with my 5-year stint there, and I'll probably be back. I still love the arts committee.
Yeah.
I still get myself involved.
Yeah. Well, it's such a great deal, the stuff you guys have been putting on. It's just wonderful.
It's been a lot of fun. It's nice to see us get back to Milwaukie Porch Fest. We might have to cancel this next Friday one, this third in the series, because of the heat wave that we're in, and city guidelines say city events should not be happening if it gets that hot. So.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I didn't know there were guidelines like that.
Yeah, there are some.
That makes sense, because that's kind of the hottest time. That 5, 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Welcome to climate change.
Yeah.
Because I've had a few summers here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's getting hotter.
Yeah, definitely. So, city of Milwaukie, the area here, there's lots to love, but there's things that could maybe change. What do you think is the less nicer parts about it?
Less nicer parts about it. I think there's some things in progress that we're working on. Like I want to see more diversity, equity, inclusion. I want to see more.
Well, you can't make people move here.
No, I'm not forcing that, but these are things I'd love to see. I'd love to see more city leadership with more diversity in it. As far as kind of infrastructure and stuff, it seems like we're doing a lot of good changes around. I've been ride an electric bike around town most of the time, and I'd love to see more safer paths for bicyclists and pedestrians. I think just having safer places to walk and ride, I think really improves the livability of a city. And of course, more trees are always great, more shade. Love to see more infrastructure for electric vehicles, even though I don't have an electric car yet. But one day, I'd love to see us kind of take the lead and become a model for other cities for how we are dealing with climate change and some of those things we can do on a very personal level.
So maybe you see things morphing into a climate change situation with the electric cars and the e-bikes and the bicycles and anyway, whether they're e-bikes or not.
Whatever. You could be riding a unicycle if you wanted to. It still saves on fossil fuels. I'd love to see us promote more photovoltaics with solar panels. Love to see us, build a more robust electricity infrastructure, because that's something that I've noticed a few times of having power go out, during some of the big snowstorms, or even, there's a danger of that during some of the heat waves too, of just overtaxing the electric grid. So finding ways to
how would they figure AC without electricity though?
We're always going to have electricity. However, we can get electricity from other sources that are renewable.
Right, that's a good idea. What else? Talked about the community. Talked about your family.
I have a question. Do you have any siblings?
So from the relationship with my mother and father, they just had me. But my father was an older dad. He was born in 1921, so he had a family before mine, and he had 2 boys and a girl, David and Terry, and then so I have a half brother and a half sister. I don't have I have a little contact with my half sister, not so much with my half brother. We're so opposite. I'm kind of the hippie dude, and he was vice president of Taco Bell and drives Porsches and has been married and divorced in the double-digit times. He's just, I don't have much to say to him. I also had a half-brother that I never met, who was one of the early leukemia patients. So I kind of have this history of cancer in my family, where I was a freakishly rare lymphoma survivor. There was only 9 documented cases like mine before me. I was the first one to live beyond 72 months, beyond 6 years.
Oh, well, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. That was 1991. That was like right out of high school when I was diagnosed. And then this other brother I had never met, his name was Dickie. Well, I have this little black and white picture of him in this little sailor outfit, this little 3-4-year-old kid. He was crackerjack smart. He lived on the air base with his parents, and he could identify the make of the airplane just from the sound, just from hearing the sound.
As a kid?
As a kid, yeah.
Wow.
3-4 years old. And he got sick, and I found spots all over his body, and local doctors didn't know what it was, but Grandma found an article in the Reader's Digest about this new thing called leukemia. And so that mobilized the Air Force, and they were flying them up to, I believe it was Seattle, where kind of all the experts were. And this was mid-1940s. And Dickie's dream was always to fly. He lived on the air base, knew Dad was a pilot at one point. They got up in the plane, and they got off and were up in the air, and Dickie looked up at her father and asked, are we flying yet? And Dad said, yeah, we're flying. Mm-hmm. And Dickie just smiled big and put his head in his arms, and that was his last breath.
Oh my God.
So I don't know of many people who really fulfill their life's dream, but I feel like he was done.
Yeah.
And in some ways, because him and I have this kind of generational history with cancer, I feel like because I've survived such a rare lymphoma that I'm taking his spirit along with me. Like I'm living for both of us and trying to live a good life.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's lovely.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else other than go ahead. Other than maybe say happy birthday or anything else you want to say to
whose birthday
about the city.
It's Milwaukee's
birthday on an anniversary.
So it's Milwaukee's 120 years since Milwaukee was founded?
No, since they were incorporated.
Since incorporated, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, Milwaukie, 120 years is looking good on you. Keep up doing Milwaukie. I know has gone through such changes through the years, and I feel like this current momentum that we're taking the city towards just feels really good, and let's make it feel good and inclusive for everyone.
All right, excellent.
That's a good
Can you think of anything else?
I can't.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I